configuration of AI agent is, I would say, 10-20%. The other, like 80-90%, is how you configure the tools.
Oskar Kramarz is an automation developer known for his work in building apps, APIs, and business process automations. Not only has he helped multiple businesses thrive with the use of AI, he also teaches hundreds of thousands of people through his YouTube channel. Today, he's revealing his groundbreaking process that will change the way that you approach your automation.
There are a lot of things that can go wrong. Agent knows when to use this tool. So basically what I presented is workflow that performs autonomous scraping. Agent was able to navigate, for example, through terms of service, privacy policy, contact us subpages, and so on to basically retrieve the profile of the company, physical addresses, email addresses, and so on and so forth. Those are like very specific problems that probably every business has.
You now have a way you can simply just ask the AI and then it reports back to you exactly what to use in what use case.
The world is full of those use cases that are just waiting to be automated.
How do you bridge the gap with that? Do you guys have like a kickoff call? Do you like set up systems? Or what's your typical pattern for interacting with other developers as a part of a team that may not have innate incompetence? Oskar, what's up, buddy? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dylan. Good to see you.
We got connected at the We Are Developers Conference. You came down and you did a presentation that had some amazing workflow use cases. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you presented at the We Are Developers Conference?
Basically, what I presented is workflow that performs autonomous scraping. So basically what I did is I've created a Puppeteer script. Puppeteer is like a framework for like headless browser where you can like programmatically create your own flows, like to click this, click that, extract this information. So basically what I did is I've created the script that retrieves the text from the page, like a full content, and the array of URLs on this page. So basically I put it back to the agent. So I connected this as a tool, and agent was able to autonomously select the website to actually retrieve information. And in this case, in We Are Developers, it was agent for retrieving contact details. So basically our agent was able to navigate, for example, through terms of service, privacy policy, contact us subpages, and so on, to basically retrieve the profile of the company, physical addresses, email addresses, and so on and so forth.
So Puppeteer allows you to essentially have the AI be able to open up a web browser, go to a certain web page, look at the contact details of the user, be able to go in and say, okay, this is the email from the website, this is what they do, what they're about, and then you can feed that into some sort of lead gen system. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically Puppeteer in this case was actually responsible only for retrieving text and links. That's all on the side of Puppeteer. So the rest was made by N8N workflow and agent.
And for this, can you talk to me about maybe the types of users that would use something like this, a system?
All the people that are very into lead gen. So basically imagine you have, I would say, a spreadsheet of hundreds of websites that you want to simply scrape. What you do in this case is you simply create like a webhook which connects you to this workflow, and you extract this data, right? So in this case, it's like super simple, and it's a matter of like seconds, minutes to extract data from the page, right? So lead gen people. But the best part of this workflow is that in case of We Are Developers, we extracted contact details, but you can adjust it since you have access to the content of the page and links to retrieve other information. So let's say you are very into SaaS applications, right? And you want to monitor pricing of those apps. So what you can do is basically adjust your agent to go through pricing pages of those apps and store it into structured form in like spreadsheet, database, or whatever.
How would you imagine a user being able to take this to the next step? Would they be doing like DM reach outs? Would they do email messages? So imagine there's a SaaS product and that they have a certain pricing model. You say, hey, I can help you increase your conversions with SaaS, and you do that via cold email. How would N8N take this to the next level in order to take those leads and then turn those leads that you generated into maybe booked meetings or something?
There are like a lot of ways to do this. Like the one you mentioned, at least, is like cold mailing, right? If you like want to create like a campaign, definitely it's possible with N8N. What you basically need to do is like just connect the SMTP server or something like this to like send the campaigns out, right? There are a lot of other options. The crazy one that I came up with is, for example, send like traditional mail. Since you have like access to the physical addresses, why not to use AI to create some kind of letters or something like this? Definitely, maybe not like I would say a most modern way to do the marketing, but definitely doable.
I've actually heard of those services, and it's like robo handwriting that you can like hook up to an automations, and it'll actually send a robo handwritten mail out to you. Okay, that's cool. I could see it because you're getting through this. There's a lot of different busy channels. I know email is a really busy channel, right? And so maybe this kind of a lumpy mail could be sent out. That's really neat. It seems like a lot of these things that you focus on are real practical business use cases for business owners or other people that are in business. And this lead gen scraping, gathering, and reach out is one system. What are the other popular workflows or automations that business owners might be interested in?
I can say from my own perspective, because since I don't run like workflows, which is my company, is like one part of my activity. The other one is family-owned company that is completely not software related, and it's actually the way how I started doing workflows. And what I do in this company actually, and I automate a lot of stuff. So I, for example, created like a workflow for, I would say, a currency calculation, which was like a super interesting story. This is actually how I started with NA10, because we are using in this like non-software company family-owned business CRM system, which basically is like super closed. And we ask the developers to create like a super simple function to do multiplication, to do the currency exchange calculation. And they gave us like a super high price for this, which we were not willing to pay. So I decided to use NA10 at that time to create like an own bot for this. Yeah, this is one of the use cases.
Well, what's so funny about that too is because I just went out to Berlin for the We Are Developers conference, and I tracked my expenses and working with it. And one of the things I was like, oh man, these are in euros, and I normally do them in US dollars. I'm like, now I need a way to be able to track those and convert those over, so I could actually see that workflow being super useful, even just for myself.
Yeah, for this thing that you mentioned, actually, I've also created a workflow. So there's a super cool open source software that is called Actual Budget. And it can be used, for example, for home budgeting, right? So you like record your expenses and so on. So what I did some time ago is like for my more personal use case, but it can be also used definitely for business too, is you do basically the photo of the receipt, right? And it's being parsed by Llama parsed, and all the data is being extracted and put directly to this system. So yeah, also super cool use case, both for a personal, I would say, budget, and for the business ones too.
It's funny because you talked about how you got into N8N. You said there was a service out there that was really expensive, and you're like, I don't know if I want to pay that. What have you seen as like the common ways that people have gotten into N8N? What's been that entry point?
Price is definitely one of those factors. This is how I got into NA10, because I've actually started like automating things a few years ago. I think it was close around like Corona times, something like this. And first I started like with Zapier, which I didn't like, then Make, which was like a short story for me. At the time, it was called Integromat, as far as I remember. Mm-hmm. And eventually I sticked with NA10. And for me, it was like crazy that I don't need to pay actually such high amount of money for each, I would say, execution for each item that is being processed by the software. So this is like a number one thing. The second one is definitely flexibility and possibility to do the things in the user interface. So basically what I do, a lot of my clients do, is basically we create the workflow as developers on an advanced level, but then we hand it over to not especially, I would say, technical people that can still monitor it and like eventually do the very, I would say, basic bug fixing on their own, right? When it's something like, I would say, more difficult comes into game, then developer is definitely necessary.
So what you're saying is that, like, in terms of services, one of the things you do is you set up maybe a complex workflow or something that solves a problem, and then you make some sort of front-end interface that allows the user or the company to be able to step in and whether it's execute the workflows or see the output of them or something like that. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. This is like the number one thing. So this is when we have clients, when I have clients that want to make the workflow accessible also for non-technical people. The other part is when I cooperate with internal developers team. So this is a bit more, I would say, easier for me because I know there's always someone within the company that can like perform maintenance or something like this.
Yeah. It seems to be, I don't know if you experience whenever you work with a new company, is there's always like someone on the team that has some sort of developer role or is interested in it, but they don't have a lot of competence within it. And you have to bridge the gap between what they know and what you're doing. So for example, maybe there's a Salesforce integrator, right? But they don't really know a lot about init. So you have to have this handoff between what you do and then what they do. Like, how do you bridge the gap with that? Do you guys have like a kickoff call? Do you like set up systems, or what's your typical pattern for interacting with other, say, developers, a part of a team that may not have innate competence?
So basically it works often both ways, I would say. They need to learn something about n8n and I need to learn something about their systems. So yeah, especially when people are quite cooperative, it's quite easy actually to do because, yeah, nowadays we have a lot of content when it comes to n8n. So I can always redirect, for example, to official tutorials to show them how it works, or create like schedule like a quick call where we jump into this and I show the basics. Is like super easy to do. On my part, of course, there is like often going through documentation of their like CRM system, like the applications they are doing and so on to actually we can be on the same page and start the works.
Got it. So there's a little bit of education, but because there's so much documentation out there, whether it's YouTube videos or straight init documentation, you can say, hey, this is what init, here's what it looks like. You can watch a couple of these videos. I can walk you through some of these things and let me map out a bit of your system so that I understand exactly what you guys are doing. And then we bridge the gap between what your current systems are to what init can do and then how to interact with it.
Absolutely. It actually works the way you said it.
And when you talk about these dashboards or these front end interfaces, I know that you primarily, a lot of things that you focus on is more advanced use cases with the init and then making these dashboards accessible to your clients. Can you talk to me about maybe a couple of use cases that you see businesses using this system for?
I can give you like a super cool example from my family-owned business, right, where I used n8n as a backend and created like a front-end application, like front-end dashboard user interface for this. So yeah, this is like a super niche business. So have you ever visited like a brewery, for example? Yeah,
a brewery.
Yeah,
sure.
So there are like a lot of tanks there, right? So where the beer is stored, and they have those like doors that are used for inspection, right, and cleaning and so on. So basically our family-owned business, our family business sells this kind of stuff, like those doors, right? So that are mounted into tanks. And for each of those doors, you need to actually add the sealing, right, for this door. And they are from various materials. So we had a problem because a lot of people have been asking us about those materials, what kind of material they should use for the specific chemical, because not only for beer, right? It can be used for water, for, I don't know, any other chemicals like acetone and so on. And on the other hand, we have the database of table of resistance, right, for those materials. So this is like a very specific use case where I used n8n because I've created like a workflow where I seeded the database with the information that we had about the resistance for those ceilings. And I've created an AI agent, basically, that is retrieving the specific material according to the use case that a user is describing. And it worked well for me as an internal use case, I would say, as an internal chatbot, because I was able to connect it to Telegram, for example, and say, hey, what kind of material for this and that, this kind of chemical is like suitable, right, in this temperature. And it worked very well. But we decided in company to make a step further. And what I created is basically a simple user interface in Next.js where I connected it to workflow. So basically user has like a very pretty form where they can insert the chemical, temperature, and so on and so forth. So basically like a very strict data that we use to actually generate what kind of sealing is the best for this use case, right? Yeah.
That's great.
This is one of the examples.
So essentially what you said is that you don't always know what materials will match up to what you can use for your business. And so what I loved about this is you started with a problem. Like, we had this problem. I'm not always sure what exactly materials match up to the doors that I need to have and what needs to be put together. So you essentially created a chatbot that gives you easy to find information. And so you don't need to go through and look through all the materials and cross-reference them and see, okay, these are what lines up. You now have a way you could simply just ask the AI and then it reports back to you exactly what to use in what use case.
Yes, and the very cool thing about this is, of course, it's using our internal database, as mentioned, but AI also is, what I've noticed, is good when it comes to applying the specific materials for the use case. So when we don't have something specific, the specific use case in our database, AI will recommend from own knowledge, I would say. So this is also cool for us because we have actually extended our knowledge here, right?
Yeah, so you're using I would say, the internal knowledge base of the company, and then you're extending on that knowledge base with AI to go outwards and say, okay, this isn't actually fitting into the system, but we do know from the world's knowledge or the AI's world's knowledge that here's a couple of materials we would recommend for this specific use case. That's awesome.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned also with, I think it was like Next.js might have been what you're talking about. I don't know if you ever use, I know Figma just has an MCP right now. I believe that you can hook up to, they have an MCP, so you can use N8N and the Figma MCP to actually create websites. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
No, I haven't heard about this. Definitely, you need to drop me a link after our call here.
Dude, I just found out the technology is moving so fast. And so when someone else comes out with it, I have a friend of mine who's an N8N developer, and he was showing me, he's like, did you know Figma can do this? So he was building and generating websites with Figma and the MCP with N8N. And I thought that was really neat. So I didn't know if you knew that. Do you do anything with MCPs at all?
Currently, I'm working with one client that is using implementing MCPs heavily. So basically, I cannot tell much about it, but what we do here basically is we create also a kind of dashboard for agents where most of the agents are actually connected to N8N. And what we also do is we have, I would say, the custom coded engine, which we connect directly to MCP servers in N8N. So basically it's super cool, especially in terms of delegation of specific, I would say, MCPs. So this user, for example, from employee from marketing has access to this specific MCPs, and those can be connected. This is a super cool because we have a custom dashboard, custom engine for AI connections, I would say, custom framework. And on the other hand, we have MCP servers. So basically users can connect own credentials super fast. And yeah, it works really well.
So you have job specific or domain specific MCPs that certain individuals get assigned to. So for marketing, there might be MCPs for maybe lead generation or creating some sort of social media content versus operationals, our operation person who might have access to maybe some sort of MCP that hooks up to whatever Plaid that you can get financial records. And so you make them domain specific, and then they can have access to the tools that they need to move faster.
Yes, absolutely. And the also cool thing is that, for example, users can connect their own calendars for this. So yeah, it's also interacting that way. So both, I would say, the job that needs to be done, and yeah, I would say personal data from those calendars, inbox, and so on. So yeah, super cool.
Love that. Speaking of MCPs, I mean, there's a lot of AI tools and features that are coming out very rapidly within it, and we know we move very quickly. What are the features that you've seen come out, whether recently, that are really helpful or really useful that have come out recently from N8N?
I haven't tested yet, unfortunately, but I suppose it can be super useful. Of course, agent as tools, so we can easily on one canvas create multi-agents. I think this is something a lot of people have been waiting for. So I definitely need to give it a try. MCP is definitely useful, cool feature, and something that I appreciate probably the most from recent updates. I've also underlined it in one of my LinkedIn posts is evaluations. So this is absolutely, I think, one of the most important features in recent month, in the changelog of N8N.
Let's look at these one by one, though. You talked about these multi-agent features. So previously, one of the things you had to do in order to create a multi-agent was you had to create an N8N workflow that had an AI agent, and then one of the tools had to be accessing another workflow. And inside that workflow, you had an agent, and then the output would be sending that back up to the original workflow. Now with this multi-agent feature, you have the ability to create multiple agents inside of one workflow so that you can see everything at once and they can all interact together. And Do you have any ideas around what you want to do with a system or workflow like that?
Not yet, probably, or maybe other way. I have a ton of ideas because I have a whole list of the agents that I want to build and a lot of like products that I want to build and so on and so forth. So I have all list for that. The problem is I don't know which one to start for this. Currently, I'm like, at this specific moment, I'm focused on e-commerce use case in this family-owned business, which doesn't rely heavily on AI agents at the moment. But yeah, I think it's a matter of a few weeks where we are going to implement some of those features too.
Yeah. I know one thing I like about the multi-agents is that sometimes it's hard to keep everything in your head. When you're building out in workflows, there's sometimes so many working parts that if you have all these sub-agents and things like that, you're trying to track what's everything happening. So if you can see in one bird's eye view inside the workflow, like all of the agents moving together and you can see them interacting, you don't need to hop around and check out the executions of multiple workflows. You can see everything operate all at once, which I know is a really cool ability to debug and track things. So one of my favorite things about Init is the ability to see the executions happening in real time and what's being processed. Because sometimes with code, you don't know what's going on. You have to see you have to have some sort of like trace back to what's going on. I love that new feature coming out. I haven't played with it yet, but I just did a meetup last week where I saw a gentleman show that to me and I was like, oh, that's right. I need to get on that. I haven't done it yet, but it looks super useful.
To be honest, like multi-agents are super important because of the reason that you mentioned. So debugging, right? When it comes to AI agents, they have sometimes then can throw a lot of errors, right? Because they are not deterministic. So that's why I mentioned like evaluations are like super important part for me to make workflows actually good and production ready, right? This is like a super important step for me. And yeah, having like now when you build the multi-agents and having them on one canvas where you can track it in one spot and you don't need to click like through tabs to go to separate workflows to see what actually happened, and errors when it comes to AI agents on development state happen like very frequently a lot. So definitely it helps to keep the flow.
What do you think in terms of, you talk about being production ready, because it's easy, I don't want to say easy, but a lot of people make fun multi-agent systems that aren't production ready, right? They're cool concepts, they're neat little use cases, but they don't actually cross the chasm from neat little use case to actually being something that could work at scale or become production ready. Do you have a process or a system for bringing these multi-agents or any types of systems into becoming production ready?
To be honest, at this moment, I don't have production-ready multi-agent system. I haven't implemented such a thing yet. Of course, for me personally, I did such a things, and I have like a testing phase in company, like 1 or 2 probably. I wouldn't call them at this point production ready. When it comes to the agentic workflows where I have like several agents one after another, then definitely I have created such workflows. And for me, it's always like a matter of like time spent on, sometimes it can be frustrating because you spend so much time on this one single node, which is AI agent, and you like tweak the prompt. And what I personally believe is what is super important, like a configuration of AI agent. But this is my personal opinion. Configuration of AI agent is, I would say, 10-20% of the whole work. The other, like 80-90%, is how you configure the tools. And this is like super important part, because especially when you have a very custom tool for your, I don't know, CRM or something like this, where you do even like a theoretically simple HTTP request, there are a lot of things that can go wrong there. So you definitely want to configure it properly. So actually agent knows when to use this tool, right? So I put a lot of effort to configure the tools properly. And I definitely then spent also a lot of time for example, for system prompt and so on and run evaluations to see what works, what doesn't, whether I should use the larger model or I can go, for example, with GPT Mini. Yeah.
Got it. So you're saying like setting up the general workflow, we'll say architecture, right? So you have an agent, they have tools like, for example, Slack, Gmail, Google Calendar, Salesforce, CRM, or whatnot. That's just the initial 20% get going. But when you talk about configuring the tools, what you're talking about is like the Slack, like maybe making a custom HTTP request for a tool or putting the prompts in place. When you're talking about getting these configuring right, where you spend 80% of your time making sure that it is actually operating the way that you want, what is your process for making sure, or any trip ups or mistakes or common patterns that you've seen that happen that makes these tools not function the way that you want them?
I think the number one mistake is like, of course, it depends on the agent, but limiting myself when it comes to the queries that can come into the agent. Because even when I run like evaluations, right, I have, for example, the queries that I have and the response that I want to like have from the agent, right, for those specific queries. But when you have created those agents and you created those evaluations like perfectly, right, you eventually want to give it to the end user. And it's completely unexpectable what end user can actually put into the agent, right? So what I do on a regular basis is I try to cooperate with the end users, or at least with people who know how the agent should behave and what queries can go into the agent, to see what can go wrong. It's definitely not possible in many cases. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but in many cases it's not possible to cover like all edge cases, but we can definitely do our best to make our agent high quality.
Yeah. Let's run through this a little bit because I think this is actually important. Step one, right? You figure out the use case, the problem you're trying to solve, right? Another step is you figure out, okay, what are the systems or tools that they're currently using, like Slack, Gmail, or whatnot. You then build out the workflow with, let's just say, a single agent in place. You make sure that it is configured properly, right? So you have the right prompts in place for the use case, right? You have the tools configured properly for each of them to make sure that the agent knows how to call those tools properly. And then another thing you're talking about is making sure that the queries, whatever the end user is going to be using, what they're being put in place, they're actually using the queries properly so they know how to request the agent, the AI agent, to be able to make certain requests, whether they're pulling all the emails out or adding things to the Google Calendar. And you say, okay, these are the types of queries and the types of prompting you can do for the agent. And then it sounds like that is the general flow. And then on the backside might be an AI evaluation system or some sort of pattern to make sure that not only is the human asking the right types of queries, but with the AI evaluation, the agent is responding in the way that is expected to give the user the results that they want. Am I getting this correctly, or am I missing something?
Yeah, this is actually the flow that I'm using. It may be like, sounds quite general, especially for people who are more into the coding sphere, because basically what we do here is like a testing, right? So we give the user instructions on how to use the agent, right? And yeah, we want to cover as many edge cases as possible. Of course, I would say reasonable borders, right? So yeah, that's the flow.
And when you talk about giving it the edge cases, it sounds like it's updating the system prompt or maybe giving a few shot prompts for the agent in and of itself. So you can see these are the types of requests that we want to have someone from the marketing team be able to say. And then we also say, ooh, Mr. Marketing, sir, this is the types of queries you make. And then with the system prompt, you're like, oh, here's some edge cases that we want to take. Do you then train the system prompt, or do you give few shot prompt examples inside of the agent in and of itself, or is there anything else that you do to make sure that they speak well to each other?
Of course, this is my approach, but I'm not sure if it's like the best. But what I want to do always is to have a clear path on what went wrong, right? For specific, for example, execution, right? So since AI agents are not deterministic for edge cases or, for example, for errors, I want to have a strictly deterministic path on what went wrong, right? In N8N, it's super cool because I can, for example, for errors, right? I can create like a specific path, like error path from AI agent, where I don't know, I can call it like, I don't know, send a message to my Telegram that something went wrong in the workflow, right? Or I can put this specific workflow execution to database and examine it later. So for this kind of cases, I want to collect them as much as possible and then analyze what actually went wrong. So I can go through history of the agent and see how the conversation went, whether it was, for example, I don't know, sometimes we have this, I don't know, open AI outage, right? And it was like the thing on the model side, or whether the query was not clear enough for the agent. So yeah, those are the things I prefer to do. So basically collect those errored or not necessarily errored, but also cases where agent didn't answer like correctly, where couldn't answer, right? So I can, after the agent, I can do a simple chain to recognize whether actually agent provided an answer or not. In case of answer has not been provided, then I also can collect this, right?
Got it. Yeah. So what you're saying is that you can always have that inside the settings of the agent or the output, say always error on output, which creates another path or another route inside of the N8N workflow. And on that new path, not only can you feed in what the error status is, you can do a real-time feedback to notify you that, oh my God, OpenAI's outage happened yet again, and it's on them, or for some reason, there's some sort of issue inside of N8N that you need to be aware of so that you can, one, respond immediately, because there's nothing more frustrating than having an automation go out on real live business use cases. But then also you can maybe add that into some sort of spreadsheet or database that lets you be able to track all of these issues to see, is this a one-off that happens 1 out of 1,000 times, or is this something that's consistently happening over time that might take a priority status for you to fix?
Yes, exactly, 100%.
I love it. I love it. When people want to get started, businesses want to get started in it and start automating some of their processes, what do you see as ways for them to get started? What are the patterns for them to get up and running? How do they figure out what's their first step from going, I don't have any kind of automation in my business, to really fully getting up and automating so that it can save a bunch of time?
So first of all, the problem that I see is what I should automate. So basically, I was at the same place. So what I've decided to do is to start identifying the potential problems in my company. As mentioned, for example, with those ceilings and the apps for ceilings or currency exchange integration, something like this. Those are like a very specific problems that probably every business has. So if not business, then you personally also have some kind of thing that you can automate. For example, those parsing receipts that I've mentioned and putting it to actual budget. I think the world is full of those kind of use cases that are just waiting to be automated. So identifying them is like a number one thing.
One thing first any business owner can do is start to list out problems. Okay, what are the things in my business that cause the most time, the most friction, the most manual labor? What are the things that I'm maybe not paying attention to, like responding to my leads in less than 3 minutes or whatever it is? But just make a list of the problems of your business and go, okay, which one of these would give me maximum value? And then maybe cross-reference that list of, here's my top problems, to here's what's easy to be automated. And then we can create that nexus point between those 2 points to be able to be automated. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. We can do this that way.
You were going to say something else. Please continue on the next point. Yeah.
And then what I would simply do is, when I haven't any contact with N8N before, definitely go into like tutorials, for example, those official, or to YouTube creators, for example, like my channel. And yeah, just learn as much as possible. And I would say a lot of people also are trying to delegate creating workflows to external tools, like asking ChatGPT to create workflow for them. I think the better way is to learn by yourself and try to connect those nodes, those pieces together. It always brings so much satisfaction, and I think you can learn a lot more along the way.
Yeah, the prompt text to workflow, it's great for kind of 0 to oh my God, this feels amazing, but you need to have some sort of at least semi-technical skills to be able to know what's going on. Because if you do that out the gate, if it breaks or if it just doesn't do what you want, you won't actually know the core foundational skill sets of how to solve any of these little bugs. Because in the world of whether it's automation or writing code, 1 comma can break the whole system, and it can be really demoralizing over time. And so I totally 100% agree with that. And so getting up and running, figure out the business use cases, go through the process of solving those one thing at a time. One of the ways that you talked about this was maybe going and looking at YouTube tutorials as one piece for seeing, okay, has someone else already solved this? For your own channel, what have you seen as videos that have performed very well? Or what are the ones that you see as the trending video content on your channel that people are really find a lot of value from watching?
So just for the record, at the moment as we are recording this, I haven't uploaded any video for a few months now. I'm a bit retired, but hopefully not for so long. But what I see in the statistics actually is top trending video of mine is the webhooks videos. This is like a super basic tutorial on how to use webhooks. So what it basically shows is we have a lot of new users coming into N8N that are looking for like a basic information on how to create workflows and how to connect them with external apps. So this is most probably why they are watching this video so heavily.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because part of the automation is essentially, when we talk about automation, it's merely moving data across different applications and being able to transform and manipulate that data in some sort of way. And HTTP requests and webhooks are the ways that you can send data out of N8N, if you want to call that, to external applications, whether that's say a type form or any of these other applications that are out there. So you can send data out with HTTP requests. You can bring data in with webhooks. And then with that, then you can take it and manipulate it through using N8N.
Exactly.
Love it. What advice would you give to anybody that has seen a lot of these videos on YouTube and they want to get started and they're just trying to figure out, okay, what do I do?
Experiment heavily. This is what I do on a daily basis, and don't limit myself. And I recommend also to our listeners, to our viewers, not to limit themselves, to basically try to push the boundaries and try to build things with N8N. So I personally, at this point, I can build probably I've built a lot of workflows, and I think I can build a lot still. But just, I don't know, 2 years ago, I wasn't at that level of advance. And creating like the workflows that I create on a daily basis was like a struggle for me. And just because I did this on a regular basis and I was trying new things, I was curious about those things, I was able to simply elevate and learn a lot of stuff along the way. And that was part of my workflow, because I've tried to do something. I wasn't able to find an easy way to do this. And I was trying to find a way to solve this problem. And then I was recording a video about this. That was, for example, for PDF generation. I was not able to find a service that I could self-host by myself to generate PDF documents. And then I found Gutenberg. Gutenberg is basically like a service that you can use to generate PDF documents from HTML, like a source code, right? So you can generate like invoices or something like this. And I was struggling with this, had this problem. I solved this, and eventually I recorded video about this, and I see a lot of people are appreciating it. So yeah, this is my workflow, and I recommend it to you too.
I love it. Yeah. Exploring, experimenting, playing with N8N, seeing what's possible. And you can level up really quickly. You talked about 2 years from being struggling to given a high level of competency with N8N. So what's cool about it is that you can get up and going pretty quickly with N8N and start to really get some skills that you can then serve you for any of these problems that come up in the future. And then what's really cool, and I think about content creators too, is that you have a personal pain or a problem. You're like, man, how do I do this? I got this problem. Then you solve it, and then you naturally want to share it with the world and be like, oh my God, anybody else who has this problem, I just want to tell you, do this, Gutenberg or whatever the things might be. This, if you have this problem, just watch this video. And which I think is one of the great things about content creators that are really educators helping people solve the painful problem. They're like, it was my pain. Please, nobody else have the same pain.
Yeah, exactly. And this is actually the power of the community, I think. And I also recommend to connect with other community members, whether there is like an official N8N community or private communities within N8N that popped out recently, a lot of them. Just connect with those people. And I think there is like nothing better when eventually you meet in real life. Like, for example, like we did in N8N Fest, which was super cool. People that just a few days ago were only avatar for you. You meet them personally and you can talk. Yeah, nothing feels better than this.
It's so fun. Yeah, you have this, I completely agree. It's the power of automation, the power of community coming together. And then you meet up and you're like, hey man, I'm working on this thing. How do you get this to do that? And then we're all kind of like working on problems together and solving each other's issues. You're like, oh, I've already solved that. You use this Gutenberg thing or whatever the things might be, because that is really the power of the same thing. Like the automation platform brings all of these different applications together, but the community brings all these people together and it allows us to group solve so that we can accelerate our knowledge, learn faster, learn smarter, learn better, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how to get a hold of you? Is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything else you'd like to let people know about? Any messages you want to give to people before you can tell them how they can find you?
Just build stuff. This is like something that I would say this is like my life domain, building things. And yeah, I recommend it to you to build stuff and share it with people. Share what you are working on, and you will see how many good you will have in return.
Cool. And if people want to find your YouTube channel or get a hold of you, how do they do that?
I have a YouTube channel called Workflows. So basically, when you type in Oskar N8N, Oskar with K, in YouTube, you definitely see one of my videos. I'm also on LinkedIn, which is Oskar Kramarz, Oskar Kramarz, you can also pronounce it. So yeah, those are like two channels where I'm probably the most active.
Oskar, it's been an honor and pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing your love, your passion, your knowledge with Innovate, and I will see you on the other side, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for hosting me. And yeah, have a great time.
All right, take it now. Bye.
Cheers.